Hi, I'm Lazaroo-Hood, entrepreneur, philanthropist and family man.
This is my podcast in conversation with.
From the boardroom, back to the beginnings, to the present with my guests, talking about business, family and sport. Today we're in West End London, here to meet Alison Cork. She's an entrepreneur, author and a broadcaster. I can't wait to hear her story and her journey. Thanks for being my podcast, Alison.
Lovely seeing you.
Oh, Alison, can you talk about your childhood and how that's influenced both your kind of business growth and as a person?
Well, it's really interesting actually, Ross, because nobody in my family ran a business. I mean, zero entrepreneurship in the nicest possible way. It just wasn't a thing. And yet, when I was 5 years old, I got into a lot of trouble at school for polishing up the conkers I found in my grandmother's garden and deciding that with my pitch refined, I could sell them successfully to my classmates. And the reason I got into trouble was I made the fatal error of putting all my shillings and sixpences, because I sold the lot. I remember Claire Willis bought all 6 of them in one batch. To this day, I remember that. And I put the money into a matchbox. So the teacher saw me with a matchbox, took the matchbox, opened it up, then got even more excited because it was full of money, confiscated it. And I remember this feeling of deep injustice, which is, I sold those conkers fair and square. I grafted, I polished those conkers, I refined my pitch, and you've just taken my money. Anyway, when I was 15, so about 10 years later, I was walking in my local area up to a bus stop, and I noticed that my teacher, Mrs. Jackson, who was then my teacher, was at the bus stop. And I went up to her and I said, Mrs. Jackson, do you remember me? And she said, oh, I think I do. You're Alison Cork. I said, yes, Mrs. Jackson. And you owe me 15 shillings and sixpence.
With interest.
With interest. So, there was nobody in my family who ran a business. But, people often say to me, do you think entrepreneurs are born or made? And I think both can happen. But for me, certainly, there was something there from a very early age.
That spark. I always call it, there's a spark which is necessary to give you that lift into that sort of genre.
Yeah, sometimes it's necessity. Like the next business I started was because I fell into debt. And that was when I was a student and I kept failing my driving test. I wanted to impress my dad and say, Dad, whilst you weren't looking, I passed my driving test. But the only problem was I kept failing it. So I ran up all these debts on driving lessons, which effectively was my student grant.
Yeah.
Couldn't ask him for more because he didn't have it to give. So I thought, you just got to do something, Cork, and quickly. So I started an advertising sheet in my university town, and I used the only thing I had, which was my sales patter, and sold advertising to local restaurants, drew a map of the city, put the ads for the restaurants around the map, and stood on the main drag where all the tourists got out of the buses, coaches, and handed them a free map of the city with all the restaurants around it.
That is quite clever.
It worked.
Where was university though?
Cambridge, yeah. And that was another small side story. Nobody expected me to go to Cambridge. I remember my grandmother was mortified that I'd applied because she just assumed I would not get in and it would bring shame on the family. And I remember her saying, what? Alison's applied to Cambridge? Whatever is she thinking? And she sort of put her head in her hands,
But was there celebratory when you got in though?
I don't think she ever stopped talking about it for the rest of her life. It was because...
Well done, you.
Well, thank you. But look, even I didn't think my chances were that great, but I thought, hell, let's just try.
And what did you do at uni?
Classics. So it was even more weird. It was Latin and Greek. It was like the least likely thing for a state school girl to be studying. But I loved the Romans and the Greeks, and I thought it was very romantic and interesting, and I still love it to this day.
I think Cambridge is gorgeous. I spent time
it's amazing.
in Oxford. Obviously, Cambridge is a bit kind of wider and more sprawling.
Yeah.
But to get in and have that lovely, almost brideshead revisited sort of.
Honestly, I was there in the 80s. It is life-changing. I think it's quite different now, if I'm really honest. I think times have changed dramatically, what with politics and the way that society is these days. But when I went, it was just a very, it was almost an impossible dream that had come true, that I should be in this city of gleaming spires. And also it was quite funny. I had to grow up really quickly because I met people who were just unlike people I'd ever met before. In other words, privately educated people.
Yeah.
And they even had names I'd never come across before, like Cassandra.
Tarquin.
And Tarquin.
My son's got that middle name, by the way, for a wee state school side myself.
So I don't want to make too big a thing of it, because I'd like to think that these days I'm a rounded individual who can sit next to a pauper or a prince. It doesn't really matter. But it was a massive learning curve of how to cope with whatever life throws at you, because I literally was put into an environment that could not have been more foreign.
But the thing is, you kind of built up that facet then, that you've got that sort of hat on from state school and that life that your parents magnificently gave you, up to the fact of moving into totally different circles at Cambridge, well deserved to get in, and learning about another hat.
Yeah.
So you can, as you said, put yourself into different landscapes and successfully navigate.
Honestly, I decided as an entrepreneur that I wanted to spend my money as I wished, and I educated my two boys privately. But I think there's an awful lot to be said for having to really sort of fight your way through a system. It does toughen you up. And it was really interesting. When I got to university, I realized that a lot of the privately educated kids had, I wouldn't say a sense of entitlement, but I think they assumed it was something they could cope with because they'd been preparing for it all their life. And for me, it was like somebody had thrown a bucket of cold water over me in the nicest possible way.
Jumping in the deep end.
Jumping in the deep end. And so I thought, no, you've got to fight for this. You've got to be better than them. You've got to be faster, smarter, work harder. And actually, that was a principle that I've always found to be very important in life, which is absolutely nothing can replace hard work, effort.
Great.
If there's one credit I would give myself, it's that I just don't give up.
I love that.
Like I'm the human weeble. You can knock me down as many times as you like. I will just right myself.
Well, I need to pick your brains on certain things, especially kids, because my wife, she's privately educated, I'm definitely not. And I kind of worry, sometimes she worries about putting the fire in the belly of our three boys.
Yeah, it's a really big question. Yeah.
There's no manual. But I suppose that leads neatly into my next question of, can you talk about how, I suppose, your successes to date to where you sit today?
Yes, so in a sense, my success came early and quite unexpectedly, in that because of this publishing leaflet that I produced in Cambridge, I called it Good Food in Cambridge, which was such a joke because there was none. But anyway, that aside, I sold that to a fellow student, and then I got a phone call one day from a London businessman who said, I'm a friend of a friend, I've been told about you, you sound quite entrepreneurial, would you come and work with me? And to be quite honest, all my friends had become lawyers and accountants, and they were all, they'd all gone from Cambridge to wonderful positions in top firms. Mm-hmm. And my ex-AAT interview with my professor, she said, do you want the good news or the bad news, Alison? And I said, oh, okay, Professor Easterling, what's the bad news? And she said, not one of us has any clue what you're going to do in life. I said, what's the good news? And she said, not one of us is worried about you.
Oh.
So they just didn't know, and I knew what I wasn't, I didn't know what I was. Anyway, got this call from this guy who said, would you come and work for me? And I thought, I genuinely don't have a better offer. I think the answer's yes. So I pitched up at the Barbican in his office, and he literally gave me the keys to the office and said, I run a mail order publishing business, and I'd like you to run it. And I said, you do realise I've got absolutely no clue how to do this? And he said, no, it's fine, but you did produce this leaflet in Cambridge, and I trust you, and you go for it. So I'm cutting a long story short here.
No, I think it's brilliant.
We spent about a year, and my job was to think up the titles of books that would sell and then commission the books. So be a student of markets. What is it so not decide I'm going to sell them X, ask them what they want and then give them X.
No, that's better.
Yeah, that's better. So we had a lot of failures because I didn't know what I was doing. And I remember the accountant sitting us down one day and saying, Alison and John, this was 1992, you are now £100,000 in debt. Just how much longer are you going to let that go on? And I said...
Penny dropping here.
And I said to my partner and to the accountant, give me, because it was all on my shoulders. You know, this guy had very neatly positioned me as the workhorse. Give me till Christmas, and it was about September. Anyway, again, long story short, I spotted a leaflet about something called the Government Auction Handbook, which was a book that exposed what were closed auctions that sold the goods of companies who hadn't paid their tax or VAT.
Right.
So they would have their goods seized and sold at auction for maybe 10% of the value. And it could be anything from speedboats to computers still in their boxes. They just come and take assets. And the public didn't know about these auctions. And I thought, this is a really compelling notion. So I bought the rights to the book, and I wrote the advert, because my job was to find the book, write the advert. It was the days of mail order, cut out your coupon, send in your check, no internet. Wrote the killer ad, put it in the Telegraph, and this was on the Saturday. There was no post on a Sunday in those days. There was nothing on the Monday, and I thought, oh well, you know, I did my best. I'll just go back to working in McDonald's, and we'll see how life unravels. And on the Tuesday, I got a call from the post office saying, we're going to have to send vans. We can't carry the mail.
No way.
No, it was true. And they sent 3 vans full of sacks of mail, and it was such a huge success that we effectively floated the company on the London Stock Exchange off the back of that title. So in
literally just that one.
Well, we had to
spark.
Obviously, yes, but you have to then have a portfolio. You can't literally go.
But that was the start, though.
It was the start, and we floated in July 1994 on the London Stock Exchange. And I was going through my scrapbooks a couple of days ago, and I found all the paperwork. It was quite sweet.
No, you're like me.
And then I did 2 years and left. And that kind of is the beginning of the next bit of the story, because the reason I left was that on the first day of the board meeting, it made me the youngest ever female founder of a publicly quoted company, which was, I didn't set out for that to happen. Didn't think of it, but it just did. Anyway, so sat at the board meeting, looked round the table, realised I was the only woman, and I just thought, you know what, I get the feeling this isn't going to be much fun. I love the creativity of that business because he gave me free rein. I think now it's going to be constrained, it's going to be male dominated, and I can sense I'm not going to have fun. So I did my 2 years, which I had to do, and I got out. And that was the beginning of the next chapter.
This is the fun, isn't it? That you end up doing, I call it a facet or a new chapter in your life. So what was the next chapter?
Yes, I mean, I'm a big believer in reinvention. You know, I look to Madonna, who reinvents herself every decade.
The Queen?
Or the Queen. It's no bad thing. And I had always, despite the fact that I had this business CV which said she's a woman who sort of co-founded a publicly quoted company, what I actually loved was homemaking. And I thought, my poor parents, they got me into one of the best universities in the world, and I'm now turning around and telling them I quite like being a housewife. So where do we go from here? So then I thought, hang on a minute, you have to make homemaking a commercial proposition.
Yeah.
Looked over the pond and saw Martha Stewart in America with a $750 million empire at that stage.
And still going.
And still going, yeah, and actually more successful now. I'm not condoning going to prison, but she managed to turn it round. Anyway, so I thought, okay, we don't have a British Martha Stewart. We don't have someone who owns lifestyle. So I started something called Alison at Home, and that was back in 1997, 98. And that has, through different incarnations of focusing on different areas of retail, that is the business I still own and run and enjoy today.
Well, this is the thing, it has to be enjoyment.
Yeah.
And you actually care about. And again, that neatly, thank you by the way, leads me into the next bit, is talk to me about your new book.
Yeah.
Because you are a successful author of 6 books.
Yeah.
So I'd love to know, because it's just not long out, and you've been to number 11.
Yeah.
You've been helping people on the back of this as well. So I want to hear a lot more about this.
Yeah, so this whole lifestyle business I've thoroughly enjoyed. It's been amazing. And I got to 4 years ago or so. By then I was into my 50s and still enjoying lifestyle, but getting the sense that retail and in particular interiors was going to undergo a bit of a difficult time. You know, you develop an instinct after a while.
It's your gut, as I call it.
It's your gut, isn't it? You know you feel what's going on in the economy.
Yep.
So I was just sort of thinking about life generally, and I got to that place where something you won't have experienced, that a lot of middle-aged women get to in their 50s. It's a very delicate time of life because your kids may have grown up and left home. That's number one emotional, punch to the stomach.
Yep.
You may want to go back into the workplace and be discovering that the world doesn't really value 50-year-old women despite their immense experience. You might have been a long time in your marriage, and that can ebb and flow, and it may not be the best time of your life.
I call it a roller coaster throughout.
There we go.
Because it's all peaks and troughs and different relationships.
Peaks and troughs. You're probably going through the menopause, which can be really difficult for women, emotionally and physically. And if you can cope with all of that, you turn around and realise your parents just became aged. And as a woman, 97% of the burden of caring will fall to the woman. So there are all these things going on, which the result of which is that there are a lot of women in their 50s who just don't feel great about themselves.
Or appreciated.
And I just looked in the mirror one day and thought, is this it? Am I going to, because I was much bigger than I am now, I was quite overweight. Am I just going to live a life of quiet desperation and be invisible? I don't want that.
Definitely not going to be with you, but I've read about you.
So I took myself off to a place where my husband actually recommended it. He said, look, I love you like you are, but if you want to change things, this is a place you could look at. And this place focused on nutrition, because the essence of regaining your health, and this is a worldwide problem now, not just America and England, is that we are eating such bad food that we are literally poisoning ourselves. And if you want to lose, 47% of America is obese.
Yeah.
We are the fourth most obese country in Europe now, in Great Britain, which is ridiculous given we're a first world country with access. We should have access
It's crazy
to a healthy food system, but we don't.
I've lost weight because I was a lot heavier, 2.5 stone in fact, and I moved to Malaysia and I had and eat healthier there.
Yeah.
Because again,
I'm sure you do. It's home cooked, probably.
That's it. No more bread with sugar. There's no secret eating with me with a cup of tea and pack of bickies.
Yeah.
But then you've got all the sugary drinks and all the other stuff.
It's sugar. You put your finger right on it. Sugar is the devil incarnate, and we are now so surrounded by it and eating so much of it without realizing because it's hidden, and that's the problem with ultra-processed food. So anyway, I literally had to relearn how to eat, and that was a bit embarrassing because I used to be a food critic, and I thought, well, I know all about food, and I really didn't. So I lost the better part of 5 stone, which is quite a lot of weight. So if I showed you the before pictures, they are suitably horrible. I'm not ashamed of them, they're on the internet. And I thought, look, I took up weight training, and weight training is the other super important thing, especially for women aged 50 plus. So as a result of that, me being a writer and a curious person by nature, I thought, look, I have to put everything I've learned into a book. But it went much further than that. It completely changed my outlook on life because I changed so much. I realized that I wanted different things out of life. So it's actually now informed the next part of my business life. I've completely changed my business model around what is now a passion for me, complete passion.
And that is now the new book?
It's Living Well, wellness products. So when I say wellness products, I don't mean sort of these ultra-processed, high-protein balls and all this stuff, because that's ultra-processed food still. A lot of people buy stuff which they think is healthy because it's marketed as such. It's nothing of the sort. So I have created recipes which are made of pure ingredients. So my byline, I'm calling it Corky's Kitchen.
Like it.
And Corky's Kitchen, the byline is delicious, naturally. So it's delicious because all the flavour is there, but the ingredients are whole, pure ingredients.
And it's not ironic because it's actually just being true.
Yeah, it's just a statement of fact. So I'm about to launch my first product, which is a chocolate truffle. And that's a case in point because I love sweet things. I love food. I love food. And so I don't want to be told, well, if you want to stay slim, you can't eat chocolate for the rest of your life. No, that's not how it works. Just don't eat the dreadful, rubbishy milk stuff. Eat dark dark chocolate.
Yeah, well, this is the big thing, the high percentage. I learned that. I took my kids to Bali, and we went to a chocolate factory. And I didn't realise that it was about the high percentage is better.
Totally.
And they use, goodness me, coconut instead of milk as a dairy.
Yes, I use coconuts.
Yeah, so a lot of it, you're absolutely right. But it comes back to the natural ingredients that you can bring forward, and like oat milk and all the other bits.
Did you know that dark chocolate has 3 times the amount of fibre of milk chocolate?
No, I did not know.
Dark chocolate is actually good for you. So is a glass of wine every day, actually.
Moderation.
Moderation.
I'm always about, my mum always said, it's all about moderation. But the thing is, you get into a glutinous side and you want more. And it becomes so easy in the Western society to do it.
We are all about treats, and because we use this language of I deserve a treat. Sorry, at what point did you deserve a treat? What do you mean? By the way, Jay Shiki, adore this restaurant. Seafood, just, oh my goodness me, it's the best.
Well, why don't we do that in the summertime that we talked about?
I would love that, would love it. Seafood, high protein, low fat, low cal. It's one of the perfect foods.
I grew up on the sea in Northern Ireland.
Of course you
so
did,
you had crab, you have Loch Ness with all the eel, and then you have all the fishing and stuff, salmon fishing in Glenarm. Wow. So I'm a big fan of the seafood, and in Malaysia at the same time.
And there's all that nonsense around cholesterol. Our brain needs cholesterol, our bodies need cholesterol. There are so many myths around health that need to be debunked because we're being sold a pup when it comes to what we buy in the shops.
Yeah, but who's selling it as that kind of comment? It's all the guys who want you to buy the ultra-processed.
Yeah, of course.
I'm a big believer that it's all kind of make-believe. Comes back to that comment. If you eat it in moderation, then what can be wrong with the whole thing? Because it happened years ago, but you've got much more information that you can go on.
Well, isn't it interesting that in the 50s and 60s, people smoked a lot more, and they drank a lot more, but obesity just wasn't a thing.
No.
Just wasn't. It's sugar. Fundamentally it's sugar. If I only had one word to describe it.
Well, you're right. Malaysia, I did not realise, is one of them in that country that it's morbidly obese. Yeah. And I only read the statistic there a couple of weeks back, and I know why, because it's all the sugary stuff. The evaporated milk they put in their teas and coffees.
Yes.
Then you've got all the sweets and goodness that they're massive on. But they've got, I've lost weight because again, it's like the analogy, you eat like a king in the morning, prince, pauper, and that's how I lose more weight. And you can eat the healthier puddings over there, tapioca, but cooked in coconut milk.
Yes.
And it's some stunning.
But do you know what? It's just little tweaks. I began by, like most people would, I suppose, at the beginning of this journey, thinking, oh, it's all going to be about deprivation and being told I can't enjoy food anymore, and life isn't going to be
cardboard you're eating.
And actually, my food is so much more enjoyable and tasty, and I eat loads. People never believe me. I even do Instagram posts saying, this is what I ate today, and people go, no, that's just not possible. It's like, no, it really is possible, because it's whole food. It's not complex food, but it's the right proportion of good carbs, your vegetables and what have you, and your fruits, fresh berries, the superfoods, broccoli and blueberries. These are the things we should all be consuming more of. And I don't understand why our food system is so broken in this country. You go to Italy or Japan, just the two random countries, but I know how it works there, and look at what they feed children on an average school day for lunch. It is fresh, it is prepared on the spot, there is very strong regulatory requirements around it, and it is super healthy. It can be done.
Completely. Well, my kids, again, they're trying to change it in Malaysia. They get nice noodles, they get avocado, they get my goodness, mango, and then they get all the other...
What do our kids get? A sausage roll.
Or pizza and chips.
Yeah.
And you kind of go bland food. But again, you're going high. But I remember, at least in my day, I'm 50, and we had proper cooks at school, but you had one choice to eat, and you ate it. You can go up for seconds, thirds, fourths, whatever you wanted. But it was good cooked food. Now it's transported in, and it's people who heat food, and it's almost been disrespectful to what we had as kids, proper cooks.
Yeah.
And they could create something magnificent. But again, I don't get the excuses, and it's strange. I'll lead on to my next question. I know it's a passion for you, not a passion project because you care deeply about it, but it's talking about the not-for-profit venture that you came with that is for women to start and scale businesses.
Yeah.
And I would love to know more about that because I know you care deeply about it.
Yeah, I do. And so being a woman in business, although I always say I'm an accidental entrepreneur, but having fallen into it and discovered that it was something I wanted to do, it struck me 30 years in, when I was into my sort of 40s and early 50s, that there weren't that many more women running businesses than there had been when I'd started. You know, when I started, if you said to me, name your gurus, I would have been on less than 5 fingers. Anita Roddick Body Shop, Sophie Merman, Tyrac, most people don't even remember her, sadly. Debbie Moore, Pineapple Studios, whom I'm still friends with today. But so 3, and I'm now stuck for names. So I thought, why is that? Obviously, entrepreneurs, we're curious, we always want to know why. And I looked into the stats, and it was so obvious that these were relatively simple things to put right. It was lack of confidence, lack of networking, lack of role models, particularly lack of role models, lack of access to finance. And so I started a nationwide networking structure that basically put existing female entrepreneurs, the key being that they were local, so they were relatable to the women who came to see them, in front of aspiring local female entrepreneurs. And I called it Make It Your Business. And that still exists today. And we've had, ministers, prime ministers, all sorts attending in their capacities as MPs of their constituencies. Mm-hmm. And we've had, Eventbrite told me recently that we'd had over 6,000 women through the door. So that was amazing.
In a short period of time as well.
Yeah, relatively short. And then off the back of that, cutting another long story short, I founded National Women's Enterprise Week because I just felt we needed more noise around this. And sometimes you have to keep saying something very loudly before people repeat it back to you. Yep. So we now have a week every June where we run an accelerator program. It's a competition, nationwide competition. 10 women win all expenses paid places, and they are exposed to top people in their field of marketing and finance, and crucially pitching for the money. And then the most recent thing I've decided to do, because I've started investing in femtech businesses all about outcomes for female health problems, traditionally underinvested in. Because
massively.
Yeah. And we're going to run a global femtech competition, and and that's being discussed.
Oh, so is that going to be bringing in? At the minute, I'm kind of learning about AI.
Oh yeah.
Are you going to input that in as well?
Oh yeah, that'll be in there big time. Yeah.
Okay, that's intriguing. Cause I agree, because my mum went through cervic cancer 20 odd years and survived, and then I've got other family members who've went through the natural menopause, and as you said, it's going through the emotional changes, but then there's the changes in relationships, and as you said also, it's how is my life changing from maybe an empty nest, come back to work.
Yeah.
There's a lot of things that also bring health problems, and then you've got mental
as well as physical.
There you go, jinx.
Yeah.
But you're absolutely right, and not enough people put that emphasis on women, because they think hardy women, they get on with stuff. And you go, well, I hate to tell you, there's like a hidden problem that is forgotten about, and they talk about men selfishly, and it is selfishly, they deal with so much. What about the different side of the coin? Mm. And again, I love the fact that you're grabbing it and pushing that forward.
Well, it's remarkable the more I learn, the more sort of extraordinary it becomes, because traditionally, many medicines and drugs that men and women take were only tested on men. There was no concern as to the impact it might have on a woman, let alone a pregnant woman or a menopausal woman or a woman in another. Crazy. And investment in female health outcomes has always been so secondary that this is an area of medicine where we really have to create parity, and it just doesn't exist. Still, it doesn't exist. And so for me, that's a right that has to be, a wrong that has to be righted. Yeah. But also, it's a bit of a challenge, whenever I see something that is a problem or isn't working, it's that entrepreneurial instinct, which is I want to put it right, I want to solve the problem.
Well, you said earlier is that these medicines have not even been considered for ladies or women who have went through or going through menopause or pregnancy.
Yeah.
There's so many, again, women are an amazing species, shall I say, that men literally have one side. Maybe there's a degree of testosterone going down, but you have monthly cycle, you have menopause, pregnancy. There's so much that medicine have to consider. That, and it's weird in this time, in 2025, that they're not really considering.
No, but looking at it positively, it's a rich vein of knowledge that we can mine and an area where we can make great strides. And personally, I only invest in femtech businesses, and I find it very rewarding, very fascinating. You know, I've got one hat on which is commercial, because I think as a businesswoman they are a good commercial proposition, because it's a huge area that needs to be nurtured, to know more about and built up. And on the other hat is all about women and there being parity and equity, and me thinking, no, we need to redress the balance here. You know, it is not acceptable to be prescribing medicines to women when you have no clue what the impact will actually be on them, because you didn't test the prototype on them.
Well, and that's it, at the certain period that they're going through as well. I think that's strange that today's medicines don't really consider, like, it's a lot of stuff in sport I'm doing, but a lot of elite sports people, especially on the women's side, they don't consider their monthly cycle. And that comes into nutrition.
Incredible when you think of the impact that can have on your performance.
And that's the scary thing. And that comes into dietary, medicinal, all the other parts. And it's crazy.
Just from the perspective of we're nurturing, I don't know, a GB team or a potential world-class athlete, we want to win. You'd want that knowledge, wouldn't you? Just because you want to win.
Aye. And it's funny as well that I find it interesting how the human species, that if you put a group of women together, their cycles...
Oh, yes, they start to coincide.
Thank you, yeah. Again, if you're doing sports as a group, then the coach has to have a consideration of that. There's so many, I use that word today quite a lot, facets, but there is. But I find that's where it's interesting, and more so than men's sport, that you need to have that considered.
It's more nuanced. You know, there are these considerations. I was so chuffed when the Cambridge women's rowing team won. Yes, get in there.
I love it. But there was nothing in there that you kind of like pushed for there now. Not the fact that you went to Cambridge. So I've got one for you. So what drives you as a person? And I suppose, what is success look to you for the future?
That's a very interesting question, because it's not the answer I would have given you 5 years ago. So, okay, I think I'm all about curiosity. That's what drives me. And I also say I've got this kind of fire in my belly, which is not necessarily always a good thing, because some days you wake up and you just want a quiet day, you know? You don't want this fire in your belly saying, no, driving you on. But you've either got it or you haven't, and I've always had it. So I'm naturally curious, and I just wake up wanting to do something better or be stronger or faster, or I can't help myself. I couldn't dampen the flame if I wanted to. So as I say, some days it feels like a blessing and other days a burden, but it's there and it won't go out. So that's that. And then in terms of what success means for me, if you'd asked me that 5 or 10 years ago, I would have given you a very obvious answer, which is, how big is my house? How flashy is my car? How much money is in my bank account?
All the materialism side.
Totally materialistic, I own up to it, and that would have been my stock answer, and I would have meant it. But the whole health journey has completely refocused my completely refocused my mind on what actually has a value. And the only thing now in my life that I think has a real value, other than my nearest and dearest, is my health.
Right.
That's it. And I have become so much less materialistic. I'd be super happy not to own paintings and jewellery, and in fact own far less of it than I used to, because it just doesn't have any meaning if you haven't got your health. And I know it's a bit of a cliche, but when you actually go through a health transformation, you realise the impact of that.
What actually matters?
What actually matters? What matters to me now is waking up every day And I have the normal problems in life that people have that need to be solved in business and with people and relationships and this, that and the other. But fundamentally, I now wake up feeling physically strong. That has an impact on your mental strength. I feel a sense of optimism and positivity and confidence, greater confidence, body confidence, but that reflects in every other way in your life. And your brain and your gut, and this probably is my final word on the subject, they do talk to each other. What you eat affects your brain, your mind, and your mental state. So it is not an exaggeration to say that if you eat properly, you will impact every other aspect of your life. Because the minute you feel better and you think more clearly and you feel more confident, you are capable of bigger and better things.
Yeah.
So I now feel that at 61, the next 40 years are going to be the best of my life. And that's not because I want them to be. I know they're going to be because I'm equipped for it.
Okay, cool. So Spanish Inquisition,
Yes,
quick fire.
you won't get anything out of me.
You say that. My mum says that too. So tell me 3 inspirational leaders.
Cool. Okay. 2 are going to be queens of the royal variety, I hasten to add. Elizabeth I.
Yeah.
I love that period of history for all its pomp and splendour and magnificence, but much more because she was a woman in a man's world.
The golden age, as it was.
And just such an incredibly strong woman, so intelligent, so fearless. And when you put her in the context of her age, as in the age in which she lived, that was just the most extraordinary confluence of person and point in history. And she was the right person for the job, and she happened to be a woman. Amazing. And that leads me on to our dear Queen just deceased. I am unashamedly a royalist, a patriot. I love my country. I believe in my country, and at the moment I feel, a little sad for my country. But she, for me, when she passed, I think there was genuine, profound sadness. She was the definition of public service, and there are many people today who could learn a thing or two, who are in public service, supposedly, who could learn a thing or two from our Queen, our deceased Queen, about public service, because I don't think they understand the meaning of it. And she devoted her entire life to what she knew was her job, to assist and promote and protect this country. And my favourite line in The Crown, which I have watched ad nauseam, is when her husband-to-be and her father are sitting in the boat at the duck shoots.
I love that one.
And he turns, the father turns to the husband-to-be, Prince Philip, and says, "She is the job." I love that line, because it just says everything.
And she was.
And she was.
And she embodied the UK, and as they said, she was the grandmother of the nation.
She was everybody's grandmother, and I still feel genuinely sad when I think about her passing. I never got to meet her. It's one of my unfulfilled life ambitions. I used to dream about it. I used to have dreams, me chatting to the Queen as if she was my pal.
Could you imagine the stories? And the longest reigning monarch.
Yeah.
And the fact that she's been, and had been, should I say, through such decades of change.
Oh my goodness. Just an extraordinary humility around everything she'd seen, done and represented. Now, I mean, she was peerless. She is as close to perfection as I could name somebody. So, and I have to give you a third. So I think in terms of strong female and being a leader, because that's something that I think a lot about, I think it's got to be Margaret Thatcher. Now, I know she's really polarising, and let's not get into party politics, but as a woman, again, who was not expected to even become an MP, let alone the leader of her party, let alone a woman of such conviction, and we'll put aside whether you believe in her convictions
from her parents' background.
Yeah, yes. That, she was not afraid to take a decision and stand by it, and I think that a lot of that is missing today in our leadership. And again, I'm not talking specifics or party politics. I'm just saying that today we don't seem to have currently the gravitas that politicians had in the past or other leaders had in the past. I don't know whether it's me looking at it through a different lens because I'm older, but other people do agree with me when we talk about it. And I think we need to see a return to public service and people understanding what that means, and being in these positions with the knowledge and the conviction and the desire to actually fulfill that role completely for the right reasons.
I'll take another stage. I think it's the fact that we've lost the identity to be proud and the fact to care about our nation, UK and country.
I'm with you.
You've got, like, the All Blacks get to earn their jersey. I would love to see it from grassroots to public service, that it isn't about the money. It's about the fact of what you're doing and working and what it represents, and the honour to take those roles. And I think that is, missing desperately in so many different fundamental parts of society.
Yeah.
And it worries me. And I hope that it's going to be injected back in again over time.
But do you know what? I think it's a byproduct of this superficiality which we see in society these days, which is, I want it, this is it, right? I want it now, I want it for as little money as possible, I deserve it, it's mine. Where did that come from? Where did that sense of entitlement come from? Or putting it another way, and putting it very bluntly, I'd like to pass a law that says that if you become a politician, you are expressly denied being awarded an honour. I bet you'd see the number of applicants decimated.
You're right, and it comes into entitlement again. I know that I'm going to get an award from an OBE, a CBE, up to a sir, a dame, because I've done my 4-year duty or whatever it is, with a nice pension package. Why?
Yeah, you did a job for which you got paid a salary.
And you wanted to do it. Service.
Yeah. So I think that's all become a bit distorted, and there needs to be the pendulum in life inevitably does tend to swing back, but then it needs to be redressed, it really does. And we need fewer people in politics who are career politicians and more people who have life experience, because you cannot expect a politician to make sensible decisions about business if they've never had experience of business. God forbid. You cannot run the economy theoretically.
No, that scares me, that some individuals who go into certain departments actually have not had the experience.
That I don't get, other than it's a divide and conquer tactic by their bosses. Like, if we put them somewhere where they're floundering, they're going to be less trouble. But that's not exactly helpful, is
and
it?
potentially fail and then leave.
Yeah.
But then you actually give them the tools to grow, and you back them up. Again, it comes back to the service, purpose, to help your country. And surely that's what we're about.
Or maybe we're just naive, Ross.
I think you're probably right. You and me go into politics. My wife wouldn't agree with that. That's a different matter. But that leads me 3 steps to success.
Well, I would say it's curiosity, hard graft, and stamina, physical and mental. I just don't think you can substitute any of those. And I don't believe in miracles or free gifts. There are no free lunches in life. There just aren't.
No, and
I wouldn't want them. I don't think they'd taste very good.
No, you don't think hard graft tastes nice, to be honest with you. Yeah.
When I'm having a quiet moment and I think, I am proud of the fact that everything I own, I've earned and I've paid for. Nobody gave me anything in life. I'm not in the least bit resentful. I am grateful that I had an upbringing which was normal, loving, and secure. That is the most wonderful, valuable upbringing one could have. It was never about money. And I became somebody who wanted to succeed materially, but I understood at that point what I'd need to do to achieve it. And so you end up it's a sort of security, because you know when you have earned it, it's rightfully yours. No one can take it away from you, and you feel at peace about it.
I think that's a perfect answer. Nice ones now.
Pardon?
Nice ones. 3 destinations you like to either have been or would like to go to.
Oh, okay. If I was only allowed to go to one more place before I left this earth, it wouldn't be the moon. It would be Corsica.
Corsica?
Yeah, it's the most achingly beautiful place I've ever seen in my life. It is, I'm happy to say, not particularly well known or popular. The locals don't much like tourists. They actually shoot road signs, so they've got holes in, so you can't read where you're going, so you might just drive off a cliff, you know, because they really don't want you there, which I kind of love. And it is the most spectacular combination of mountains, pure unadulterated nature, sea, wonderful food. And the GR20, which is the toughest long-distance trek in Europe, is the spine of Corsica. It's the mountain range. And I did that with my son when he was 12, and it was one of the best experiences of my life. So I love climbing mountains, so that's one of my favourite mountain ranges. Yeah.
And never heard that one, though.
Oh, Corsica is fabulous, but don't tell everyone.
No, I won't. I'll tell my wife, but okay, I'll give you that one.
And then I guess I'm kind of quite European focused. It would probably have to be Italy and Greece because I studied classics, and they are, in my opinion, and with due respect to the Chinese and the Egyptians, the 2 great civilizations of this earth. And so much of our culture, our language, our understanding of science and technology, and you know, like the first clock mechanism, etc., etc. It comes from the Romans and the Greeks. So, you know, if you want to learn about life, go and read what they had to say about it. It's not a bad place to start.
Yeah, we've not really done Europe. Our plan is to start this summer. Because my wife being Malaysian, we go out to the east, and now we live there. We're coming back here, so I might pick the brain.
It's just so much. It's just wonderful.
Well, that's easy. 3 foods.
Oh, my goodness me. Well, look, I'm a former restaurant critic. That is so unfair. Okay, right. 3 foods. Actually, I can answer this. Game. So I'm talking generically, but venison, if I had to be specific. Love venison.
Blueberry or blackberry?
Oh, blueberry what?
Compote, you go with...
Oh, I hadn't thought about that. No, probably cranberry. Yeah. No, I haven't thought of blueberry or blackberry. But you kind of stole my thunder there, because... So it's venison, blueberries as a fruit. I think they're absolutely amazing. And probably macadamia nuts. Or even better, macadamia nut butter.
I've not had the butter.
Oh, it's sensational. Just eat it out the jar. Just don't be shy.
No, you got to come in. Anyway, go and get this it. 3 ambitions.
Well, my current immediate ambition, I'm launching a food product, which is a luxury chocolate. So just as a businesswoman, I want to see if I can bring all my experience to bear and sort of execute the perfect launch. I just want to refine everything I've learned over the years. So I've got an immediate short-term ambition to make the chocolates work. I have, was it business ambitions or just ambitions?
Anything you want to talk about?
Okay, fine. I think my second ambition is to be the right sort of mother as my boys, who are now 21 and 24, go into this next really important phase of their life. I want to see them, hopefully, pick wonderful partners, enjoy them growing their family, and just be, I think by my own admission, I was probably not the most involved mum when they were tiny, because I was so focused on my business and I had a vision of what a businesswoman needed to look like and sound like. And it was the 80s, you know, shoulder pads and what have you. So I think I'm a better mother now, so I'm really enjoying that thing of motherhood. And the third thing is that it was a conversation with my mum again recently, and when she said, could you not calm down, you're 61? And I said, well, you know, there is, because we were talking about this global femtech competition that I want to launch. And I said, you know, before I scuttle off this earth, I do want to do something that could conceivably be said to have had global impact. It would just be completing the circle, literally and metaphorically. And the idea of a global femtech competition that is all about women and enhances female outcomes and addresses an injustice seems to me like a pretty good goal. So that would be my third.
I like that ambition.
Yeah, that's it.
Well, 3 ways you try to relax?
Ooh, well, exercise. A good taxing bout of weight training does get the old endorphins going. I'm a massive fan of saunas, so 4 of those a week. They reduce so they reduce your all-cause mortality, I should say, by up to 40% if you take, let's say, 4 a week at 170 centigrade for no more than 20 minutes. Finnish studies tell us.
I was going to say, because every time we went in Airbnb, there was always a sauna in one of the places.
There are more saunas in Finland than there are cars.
Couldn't get over that.
So I was in Latvia recently and I did a black sauna, which involves the sauna bit and then jumping into a lake that still has the ice crust on the top. That was extreme.
I'm not going to do anything with you. No. You're crazy.
Sorry, what was the question? I can't remember.
3 ways you relax.
Oh yeah, so
one more.
Saunas, weight training, and eating. Just a really wonderful meal. I adore food. Just because I'm all about health and wellness does not mean I deny, quite the opposite. I do not deny myself. I adore my food, and nothing gives me greater pleasure than eating something that's beautiful. So it's got to be one of the reasons we're alive, right? Got to be.
I think, was it the gloriousness of food from the Greeks and the Romans all the way through? I think if it's cooked with heart and soul, and you therefore feast on your taste and eyes, then what else have you worked hard for?
Yeah.
So I'm with you on that.
Yeah.
So always a daft one at the end is, how many hours a day would you say you work?
Okay. My brain does not switch off. And that's, again, I said earlier, it's not necessarily a blessing, it is a fact in my case, to the point where my poor husband, we've been married 25 years, says I conduct entire board meetings in my sleep. When I will literally lie there going, well, I really don't think that's acceptable. You should step up and take responsibility. It just goes on like this all night. So the short answer is, I don't think my brain does switch off, but I've got to a place where I'm sufficiently enjoying what I do by dint of being a bit older, a bit wiser, etc., that I don't mind, and the edges are really blurred. But having said that, my real quiet time, when everything goes silent, my subconscious might still be working, but most of me is quiet, is when I'm walking in nature. Hence I love climbing mountains. And I do that 6 or 7 times a year. It might only be 3 days. I get on a plane, find a mountain, climb it, get off the mountain, get back on the plane. But that is absolutely my most precious time. I don't take any of my family. Sometimes I go alone, sometimes I might go with a girlfriend, and that is total
me time.
meditation. It's a meditation, yeah.
I think, kind of look back, I think the old analogy, isn't it, that if you enjoy what you're doing, you never do a day's work, which is kind of, you're saying, but you do need to have a little bit of, I suppose, the subconscious is, it will work, but you have your me time.
Yeah, I think your mind physically needs to rest. You do need rest. People who say, "Oh, I never sleep. I only sleep 4 hours a night." Well, your brain will burn out. You do need rest. Your body needs it. So it's really important to have it. But I think maybe another way of phrasing that question is, is your enthusiasm undimmed? Is it 24/7? And the light bulb is always on. I'm always curious. If somebody says something, even if it's a subject that I know nothing about, somebody was talking to me recently about nuclear medicine, and I just thought this was fascinating. I know zilch about nuclear medicine, but what she told me was so interesting. All of a sudden I thought, wow, it's another area I don't know anything about.
Love it.
So that's it.
Thank you. I think you've enlightened us quite a lot.
Oh, really? Well, I'm very glad.
Thank you very much. Alison, thanks for doing my podcast today, and it's appreciated. So here's a cuddle. Oh, thank you.
It's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much.
Thank you, my dear.